No, this is David. By the time I finish with this, the last slide I'm going to show you in this presentation, I'm going to introduce myself in a little more details. What you see on the screen is a picture, and they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And you notice this is, as you see, the book of Daniel. We're going to be talking about the book of Daniel, one of the most surprising books in the Bible. And also another book that's surprising is the book of Ezekiel. Both the book of Ezekiel and the book of Daniel, their names, Daniel and Ezekiel, are names of angels. And we're going to explain that in a few minutes as well. You notice he's looking up in the air. Okay, I'm going to pray a prayer, the prayer that Jesus Christ prayed that you're going to find in the book of John. And that's in the 17th chapter, verse 1 all the way through verse 26. I'm going to recite that if I can, and at the same time, I'm going to explain the looking up into God's face when you pray to Him. His Son, Jesus Christ, when before He died, prayed for the whole world, and His prayer that He prayed, looking up into God's face, was, Father, I was come to glorify your Son, as your Son may also glorify you, as you have given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as you have given him. And this is life eternal, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, of whom you have sent. So I've glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work for which you gave me to do. And now, O Father, glorify you me with your own self, with the glory which I had with you before the world was. So I manifested your name unto the men which you gave me out of the world. Yours they were, and you gave them me, and they've kept your word. And now they have known that all things whatsoever you have given me are of you. For I have given unto them the words which you gave me, and they have received them, and have known surely that I came out from you, and they have believed that you did send me. I pray for them. I pray not for the world, but for them for which you have given me, for they are yours, and all yours are mine, and all mine are thine, and I am glorified in them. And now I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Holy Father, keep through your own name those whom you have given me, that they may be one as we are. So while I was with them in the world, I kept them in your name. Those that you gave me I kept, and none of them are lost but the son of perdition, that the scripture may be fulfilled. And now come out to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they might have my joy fulfilled in themselves. If I've given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, even as I'm not of the world. I pray not that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil. They are not of the world, even as I'm not of the world. And sanctify them through your truth. Your word is truth. If you have sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them into the world, and for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they may be sanctified through the truth. Neither pray I for these alone, but for them also which shall believe on me through their word, that they may be one as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they may be one in us, and that the world may believe that you have sent me. And the glory which you gave me I have given them, that they may be one even as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me. Father, I will that they also whom you have given me be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory for which you have given me. For you loved me before the foundations of the world. O righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you, and these have known that you did send me, and I have declared unto them your name, and will declare it, that the love wherewith may be in them, and I in them. Now that's the prayer that Jesus Christ prayed for you and I before he died. So remember that the first thing he did before he died was to pray for you, and God answers all prayer. So believe that if you decide that you want prayer that Jesus Christ prayed for you to be answered, just like the one we're going to explain in a few minutes that Daniel prayed, and he prayed for his people. We're going to explain in detail how God answered Daniel's prayer. Well, Daniel, like Jesus, looking up into God's face, praying to God. So just like Jesus looked up before Daniel looked up, or Jesus looked up after Daniel looked up, I'm going to explain that in a minute, God answered both prayers. And we truly, truly want the prayer that Jesus prayed for us, for God to answer his prayer. Now, Daniel, and let's give you a little background of Daniel. Daniel's father was told by a prophet to, to go tell the prophet Isaiah. God told Isaiah to go tell Daniel's father that he had to die, that he was sick to death and he had to die. And Isaiah did as God said and went to tell Hezekiah that he had to die. But then Hezekiah was a righteous man. So he reminded God, Hezekiah did in his prayer, not to die. He prayed to God, and God extended Hezekiah's life for an additional 15 years. You can find that in in the 20th chapter of the second book of Kings. You want to go there and study that to see the background. But now, after Hezekiah prayed, God did extend his life for 15 years, but he told Isaiah to go tell Hezekiah that during that time that he had extended his life, that he would have sons that will be issued from him, or that he will beget, that he will be, and those sons will be eunuchs in the house of Babylon. So now we're getting down to Daniel. Daniel, his three brothers had done anything wrong except be born to a father that did something wrong. And what I'm suggesting, to let you hear what I'm saying, Hezekiah was a righteous man, and that's why God extended his life for 15 years. But he did something that he should not have done, and that's to let the king Nebuchadnezzar come into his house and see all the gold and silver and these artifacts or vessels of God that was in Hezekiah's house, and he wasn't supposed to do that. So God then, doing what he had done, had to do, he then gave Hezekiah four sons. And when you see the names on the screen, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel, these are four brothers that's in the book of Daniel. That's one of the surprises I want to explain to you, that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were the four sons that you'll find in the 20th chapter of the second, in the book of Second Kings. So now we're not going into that any further because of the time constraints that we have with this presentation. Daniel now is looking up into God's face, praying, as you can picture this, our picture being worth 1,000 words. And look, he's among the lions, and you're going to see in a few minutes in the 6th chapter, 22nd verse, that God came down and closed the mouth of the lions, sent an angel, that is, to close the life of the lions who did not eat Daniel. We're going to explain that in a few minutes also. It's a why and what Daniel had. Now, remember I said now that Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were brothers, and they had something that no other brothers had as a group as they have had, and we're going to explain that in a few minutes as well, because of what their father had done, and the reason why their father had paid the consequences for what he's done. Both good and evil produces a consequences. The good consequences, or a person that does good, gonna have good consequences. But if you do something that's against God's word, God does not change. He will punish you, and you have consequences of what he has already told you, because he can't change. If he told you not to do something and you do it, then the consequences is you'll be punished for what you've done, because he can't change it and not do it. Even though you may have a good life, but still God will change. So I'm going to stop backgrounding now. Let's go on with this presentation. Now, Daniel, as I said, is looking up into, this is the story of the book of Daniel. In the Bible, you will go to the book of Daniel, and all this information I'm giving you in this presentation here comes from the King James Version of the Bible. But I recommend you use whatever the version of the Bible you want to use. It doesn't really matter, because all the scriptures were produced by the gift of the Holy Spirit, or whoever did it. So make sure you don't designate just one book, one version of the Bible to use. I use in the King James Version because I've used it now for many years. So let's go on now. This is the prayer that Dan is praying. I'm not going to get in details about the prayer because it will take too long for me to go directly for everything in the prayer. But I do want you to recognize what Daniel is praying to God for. He's praying for God to take his people out of bondage. Now, remember, I told you that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't do anything wrong, but they were held captive for 70 years. They were captive by Nebuchadnezzar and three other kings. They had to undergo the captivity under four different kings, but being a captive under all these four different kings, all four brothers lived like kings, if you can understand what I'm saying. They were captives, and all of their families, the tribe of Judah and tribes of Israel, were captives in Babylon for 70 years. But these four brothers lived like kings, didn't do anything wrong except be born to Hezekiah, who didn't actually do sin, other than the fact that he let Nebuchadnezzar come into his house and see the things that God didn't want Nebuchadnezzar to see. And as a result of doing that, the good king, Hezekiah, was punished. Even though he was given the 15 years to live, his sons were the one that was punished, because his sons and all the other tribes of Judah, as you can see in verse 2, verse 7 here, were in Judah. Now, Israel, Jerusalem, as you see on here. But let me point this out right now, so you're gonna see as I don't get into go to details as you study this lesson. I'm sorry, Jerusalem is in the land of Judah. Now let's go on with this. So I'm not gonna get in more about information about this prayer, other than the fact that just let you see this, stop this slide, and study this prayer for yourself, and you'll see how God answers prayer, especially when you for these two prayers, the prayer that I prayed for Jesus Christ, prayer in John 17, 1 through 26, and all of the four, from verse 4 down through the 16, no, the 20 some chapter of the book of Daniel, where his prayer ends. So let's go on. Stop this slide, and this is the first part of the prayer, and this is the second part of the prayer that Daniel prayed. And like I said, it goes down to from verse 4 down to verse 27 in the ninth chapter of the book of Daniel. So Daniel's prayer is in the ninth chapter, verse 4 through verse 27. And you understand that prayer after you study it, and you see how God answered the prayer. But he sent an angel. You see here in verse 21, he said, yes, that's why I was praying, Daniel was saying, even the man Gabriel. So God sent Gabriel, the angel, to tell Daniel, and I underline that so you can see the discussion between Daniel and Gabriel, so you can see how God answers Daniel's prayer. Okay, so make sure you stop these two slides of Daniel's prayer to understand Daniel's prayer, and make sure you try to memorize the prayer that Jesus Christ prayed, because the prayer that Jesus Christ prayed is your prayer, where Jesus is asking his Father to give you what his Father has given him, which is the glory of God. Okay, Daniel had something from God that we're going to explain in a few minutes that he got as a result of what his father had done, and the goodness of his father was in there, even though the bad things that his father did was why Daniel and his brothers were in captivity, if you can understand that. But Daniel and his brothers also received something of circumstances of their father doing good. Okay, now let's move on. Different times of stories are being told about Daniel. I'm only showing you this slide here to show you that the God, according to verse 6 of the book of Daniel, in the 6th chapter, verse 22 of the 6th chapter, said, my own God sent his angel, as his angel, to shut the mouths of the lions. So now Gabriel, the man Gabriel angel that we talked about earlier, is this one that shut the mouth of the lions, so that the lions did not eat Daniel after Darius put Daniel in the lion's den. So Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were punished by all four kings for what they would not do against God Almighty. They would not turn against God, and being righteous, God rewarded them of their righteousness, even though they were in captivity. Their rewards were to be lived as good as the kings were living in the kingdoms of where they were also captives. They were captives or slaves, as it were, but at the same time, they lived just as good as the kings because of God's reward for them. Move on. Now, this is the table of contents. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, because you can stop this slide and do for yourself. But what we're showing you this is to show you how the book is laid out. The book of the book of Ezekiel and the book of Daniel, the two books in the Bible that does not go according to all the other books. Verse 1, or chapter 1, is going to give you information, but you notice what the information is in each chapter under each king, and you see how the kings are laid out. And the kings are Nebuchadnezzar's son, Darius, a Mede, and also Cyrus, which is also a Mede. So we're talking about four different kings, and the table of contents is going to give that information. I don't want to spend a lot of time and take up too much of time. Now, again, we're getting ready to get into the story. We're just still now finishing up the background. Nebuchadnezzar, you'll see that in chapter 1, verse 1 through 4:37. His son Belshazzar, king, chapter 5, 1 through 8:27. Darius, which was a Mede, you'll find his story about Daniel in chapter 9, 1, verse 1 through 9:27. So it's all in chapter 9. And this is where Daniel was praying, the prayer that Daniel prayed is in verse 4 through verse 27 of chapter 9 under the leaders of Darius. But you notice now Darius served in two different parts of the book of Daniel. You see in chapter 9, verse 1 through 9:27. You also see Darius again in chapter 11, verse 1 through 12:13. So he's in two chapters, actually three chapters. He's in chapter 9. Darius is under over there captivity, and also in 2 verses 11 and 12, Darius is over there the four brothers captivity. So this is, stop this slide and study it for yourself. I'm just laying out to give you an idea of how many books that Daniel and the story of Daniel encompasses within the Old Testament, not just in Second Kings or in the book of Daniel, but you see other books and the story, the reason for the story, you're going to get that as we go forward with this lesson if you have not already studied it for yourself. And when you go, if you have not studied it for yourself, when you go study it, you're going to see that all these Old Testament books are encompassing the story of Daniel. There's one thing I do want to point out, and we're going to get there in a few minutes when we get to chapter 1 of the book of Daniel. Make sure you go back and study the information now. Now, let me point this out here as to why before we get into chapter 1 of the book of Daniel. Understanding the book of Daniel, chapter 9, 12, 9 through 12:13, and how it relates to Revelations 5, 1 through 5, 5. In the book of Daniel, when we get to chapter 12, it's going to show you how they told Daniel to seal up the books. Well, and you'll see that right here. I put it in and I underscored it for you to show you that Daniel is the one that sealed up the books that you're going to see in the book of Revelation of the seven books, the seven seals, and how they were opened, encompassing over quite a few chapters within the book of Revelation. But yet Daniel is the one that secretly has sealed up the seals that you're going to get when you get to the book of Revelation. That's the whole compass of this. Now at the bottom, we're moving kind of fast because I got to go through all this in a whole little period of time. Down at the bottom, you see one day with the Lord is of 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. Well, in the book of Daniel, he's talking about the number of days, the 1,290 days. He talks about the 1,335 days, and when you multiply those days time 1,000 years, one day with God being 1,000 of your years, and one you multiply the 1,000 of God's one day times the number of days that he's talking about here, and that's how you come up with that information. Now I'm moving right on. Now we're getting ready to get into the background that I've already given you, and I changed this from the time when I laid it out. But you see all in blue. This is where in the book of Second Kings, chapter 20. It's if we look at the first verse. In those days, Hezekiah was sick to death. And chapter verse 2 said, and the prophet Isaiah, the son of Abzor, came to him and said unto him, thus saith the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. That's when Isaiah went to tell Hezekiah that he had to die. But you notice, to keep on reading of this, you'll see where Hezekiah prayed to the Lord and expressed his heart to the Lord, and the Lord gave him 15 years to live. And all that information is on this information here. I'm not going to try to read everything here for you. All you got to do is stop aside and read it. I'm just introducing you to what you read in the background of this whole process of what we're going through with this presentation. And go all the way down now from chapter 20 ends up in this, and make sure I'm showing my chapter 20 verse in the Second Kings. The ending of that is here and said, then said Hezekiah unto Isaiah, this is before he died. Hezekiah is telling Isaiah that he would have sons, and that his sons will be issued out of Hezekiah, and they will be eunuchs in Babylon. You see that information just that I passed it, but anyway, I'm not going to go back. That's what the information is just showing you, and why I'm showing you that information, to show you that Hezekiah had 4 sons, and they were all castrated, made eunuchs, and put into the house of Babylon. And that's what God told Isaiah to go tell Hezekiah, that he was going to have 4 sons, and those 4 sons would become eunuchs and be captives in the house of Babylon. And this is the story that was told to Hezekiah by Isaiah from God before Hezekiah had the 4 sons. But Hezekiah had done something that he should not have done, and God punished his sons before they were even born, if you can understand what I'm saying. Even though they were in captive, they lived like kings in captivity because God had his plan for all four of his sons to do what they've done, and especially Daniel, because Daniel, as you're going to see in a few minutes, it was given something from God that you and I have, and that's the significance of giving you this book of Daniel like it is, because we have those things that Daniel had. We're talking about the spirits of God. Now, in the book of Revelations in chapter 5, verse 6, I hope that you go there and read it for that. It's disclosed that John is talking in that part of the book of Revelation, which is all of Revelation. But John discloses in chapter 5, verse 6, he said, and I saw a lamb standing in the middle of the beast, and in elders in the temple, and the elders, and as if though it was a lamb had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God. Well, those 7 spirits of God is the secret of what Daniel, Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego had in order for them to be in positions in captivity, but yet living like kings. And we're going to explain that in a few minutes. But now, in how the uses of these 7 spirits in the book of Isaiah, which took Isaiah 113 years for him to write the prophecy of Isaiah, but in the 11th chapter of the book of Isaiah, in chapter 11, verse 2, it's disclosed and explaining to us the 7 spirits of God that you'll find in the book of Revelation in chapter 5, verse 6, which is knowledge, understanding, which is might, counsel, the fear of the Lord, and the Lord's glory resting up on each one of us. Those are the 7 spirits, and we're going to not get into each one of the 7 spirits other than the fact that we're going to show them right here in the book of Daniel in chapter 1. You notice down in chapter 1 in the book of Daniel, verse 4 said, children in whom will be no blemish, but well favored and skillful in wisdom and cunning in knowledge and understanding, sincere in such, and have the ability of them as such that in the king's palace. Now we're going to stop there, but the significance of this is to show that the children of Israel, these 4 sons, the tribes from the tribe of Judah, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, and Nebuchadnezzar's son, were given the 7 spirits of God that you find in Revelation chapter 5, verse 6, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 2 through 4. These are the 7 spirits, and I put each one of the 7 spirits as they are used, and when they use that spirit at that time. And I'm going to show you in this detail how it's being noted by God that there's 7 spirits was given to these 4 sons in their father's womb. Up at the top, before we get in this, let's go up to top. In the blue it said, and your sons shall be issued from you. This is Hezekiah talking to, this is Isaiah talking to Hezekiah in chapter 20 of the 2nd Kings, telling Hezekiah what's going to befall him during the 15 years that God has given him to live. Verse 18, it said, and your sons that shall issue from you, which you shall beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of Babylon. This has been foretold even before Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are living. They are now in their father's body and not yet even born, that God is telling Isaiah to tell Hezekiah what's going to befall these sons. And down into verse chapter 1, it's disclosed that these 4 sons will be skillful in knowledge, wisdom, understanding, might, counsel, fear of the Lord, and the Lord's glory resting upon them. Those are the 7 spirits that all of us have, because Isaiah's prophecy in the book of Isaiah chapter 11 is the prophecy about Jesus Christ. That's what I'm trying to show you. That was sent forth into all the earth were the 7 spirits, and Jesus Christ was sent forth into all the earth by God, that you and I can have the same spirits, 7 spirits that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had, and also that Jesus Christ brought to us that we can have, because in his prayer now, he's praying that the world can believe that God has sent him, and that we can be one with him as he with the Father. We can all be one. And the glory that God gave him, he's praying for you and I, for God to allow him to give you the glory that God has given him. And having that glory that he has, the glory that he has that Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego had before he was born. Because you know that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they live in BC, before Christ. Christ is coming AD, after the death of Christ, so you and I can have this same spirit. I'm gonna move on, taking too much time. Genesis chapter 1, the significance. Stop the slides. Make sure you stop the slides. I'm pulling out 2 or 3 things as we go along through this process. That Daniel, Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego were units in the house of Babylon, and they all had knowledge, skills of learning, the wisdom, and Daniel had understanding and all visions of dreams. So Daniel could interpret all kinds of dreams because he possessed the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, the might, the counsel, all 7 spirits of God. Daniel had those 7 spirits. So did his 3 brothers, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, who all names were changed, and you'll see their names on the very first slide I showed you to show you their true names. But like the captives of America, where I am making this presentation, all the African American peoples that's now called, their names were changed, and they were different. We have not always been African Americans. At one time we were called black. At one time we were called colored. At one time we were called niggers. So we have changed over a period of time and been called different things, just like Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego, and Daniel. Their original name was changed, and they were given Persians names, as you can see what has already shown in this information. But even changing their name, because God does not change, and whatever God puts and make, it does not change. And God formed all of us from the dust of the ground, breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, and we became a living soul. And we're not going to ever change, because God didn't make us to change. The body that He housed us in, it's just a temporary temple. But the soul, the living soul, is not going to change. It's going to live forever as God lives forever. We just came out of eternity, breathed us in the eternity, and we became a living soul to live in eternities, either with God or without God, either good and the bad. There's only just 2 things that we're showing in this whole lesson: that Hezekiah was a righteous man, did good, but he did one thing wrong, and as a result of the wrong that he did, there's the consequences that come with good, and there's the consequences that come when we do wrong. The prayer that we're prayed in what Jesus Christ is praying is that you and I don't do anything wrong, so we can have the consequences of being with Him as one, as He is with the Father as one. That's what he's praying. Now Nebuchadnezzar was the king under this in chapter 1 through chapter 4, that Daniel had to undergo and live and as a captive in Babylon. But as a reward of him being a captive and interpreting the dreams and doing the things that he did in Babylon for Nebuchadnezzar under the 1 through 4 chapters, we'll see that how he was rewarded by Nebuchadnezzar to be second in charge of the kingdom. So that's, excuse me, I had to stop and drink water. Chapter 2, we're seeing the 2nd year in the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, a dream. He dreamed a dream. So throughout this process, we're going to be talking about the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 1, we talked about the introduction of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego having the powers to interpret dreams. And here we're talking about Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2, as you can see, had a dream, and Daniel was the one that interpreted his dream. Now, other lessons that I've been given, and you'll see down at the bottom in blue, Jesus Christ video prayer. That's the prayer that I prayed earlier. You'll see other lessons similar to the lesson that we're getting here, and where I put them into a URL, and you're going to see come to Bible class in different forms of other lessons that we have given. And we dub each lesson a Sunday school lesson for today's class. So whatever day you're watching this on, of the day of the week or the time of the day, this is a Sunday school lesson for today's class. And it's just for you, and of course, especially you. Whatever language you speak, you can get this in. Whatever thoughts you have, I want you to gather them from the lesson. Just stop the slides and remember that the information that you're reading is coming from the King James Version of the Bible. But I pray tell that you use whatever version that you choose to use. I just want you to be able to get the revelations that God is going to give you about out of whatever version that you choose to use. Now let's move on. We're still now in chapter 2, but we'll sum it up this information to show you how now Daniel's name was changed by Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar's astrologers, magicians, saysors, and all the other Chaldeans could not interpret Hezekiah's, I'm sorry, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. But you see at the top in verse 19 that there was a secret revealed to Daniel and a nice dream. This is Daniel's vision now, but Daniel's visions was given to him. He said, Daniel, bless the Lord God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of the God of heaven forever and ever, for wisdom is and might are his, and he changes the time of the season. He removes kings and set up kings. His wisdom he gives it to his kings. So all we're talking about is the seven spirits of God. I didn't highlight might, but might is one of the seven spirits of God. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, might, counsel, the fear of the Lord, and the Lord's glory that rests upon us all. We're moving on because just make sure you stop this information and look at it, because we're now over half an hour. Don't want to go over an hour. But down at the bottom, it says 7 on your side. Well, the 7 on your side are the 7 spirits of God in detail, explaining how you can use the 7 spirits of God. Daniel, I'm showing you in this lesson here how God let Daniel use his 7 spirits of God so Daniel could free his people out of bondage for 70 years. So Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all went into captivity, and they were there for 70 years doing nothing wrong except be among the tribe of Judah and the children of Israel. And we're going to explain why there are two different groups, because there's a split of the Israelites. All 12, 10 went one way and 2 went another way, and Judah was one of those 2 that went the opposite direction of the other 10. So that's why we're seeing this lesson and many lessons throughout the Old Testament. You'll see the tribe of Israel and the tribe of Judah, and you were actually talking about the same people, if you can understand what I'm saying. So the 7 spirits of God is sent forth into all the earth. So all of the 8 seed of Abraham have an opportunity to use the 7 spirits of God going through his son Jesus Christ. Everybody, in order to reuse the 7 spirits of God, have to go through now his son Jesus Christ. Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego did not go through Jesus Christ because Jesus Christ came after they did. They are AD, they are BC, and Jesus Christ is AD. So in this lesson here, in the 3rd chapter, Nebuchadnezzar now is having another dream, and Daniel is the one that's interpreting the dreams of Nebuchadnezzar. Stop this information for yourself. Read. This is the 3rd chapter, starting on the 3rd chapter of the book of Daniel, and the 4th chapter is all under the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, 1 through 4. But when we get to chapter 5, it will be talking about Nebuchadnezzar's son. These now is where Nebuchadnezzar has set up something that he wanted the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to do, but they just would not do it because of God and their belief in God Almighty. So they would not bow down to the image that Nebuchadnezzar set up. And so Nebuchadnezzar now is going to throw them into a fiery furnace, as you're going to see all of the information right here in chapter 3. He's going to put them into a fiery furnace. And the significance of me showing you this is that Nebuchadnezzar, after throwing them into the fiery furnace and heating the furnace up 7 times hotter than what it would normally be, the men that threw them, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel, into the fiery furnace, they were burned, but the ones they threw in, the 3 brothers that they threw in, nothing happened to them, except we're going to see that, if you have not seen this or known this for yourself, is that Nebuchadnezzar is realizing that there are 4 in this furnace, and he said, and we showed you just now, and that one of them looked like he was the son of God. This is now we're getting into the 4th part of this lesson of today's class. I'm gonna take a drink of water. I'm sorry. Where Daniel now is being in chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4 has this dream, another dream. But in chapter 4 is a different kind of dream, because we're going to see in just a few minutes. Let me change the slide and go over to the second part of the chapter 4 and put this in purple. The dream was given to Nebuchadnezzar by a watcher. You notice in 13 it said, I saw the vision on my head. This is Nebuchadnezzar talking to Daniel. I saw a vision in my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. He cried aloud and said, hew down the tree. This is the watcher and holy one that came down from heaven to give Nebuchadnezzar this dream on his bed. Now, a watcher, and the watcher set up a decree. Look at verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watcher. So the watcher set up a decree in this dream that he gave Nebuchadnezzar on Nebuchadnezzar's bed, that the only person that could, using the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, the might, the counsel that God had given to him, Daniel is the only one who could interpret the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. That's the significance of showing you this. Make sure you go and study this slide and all the other slides that I have given you. We're now in chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. We're still in this chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. And this is where now the dream that the watching the Holy One had given to Nebuchadnezzar on his bed, where Daniel has now interpreted the dream, and now he's telling Nebuchadnezzar all that he needs to know about the dream that the watcher and the Holy One gave him on his bed. Okay, so we're moving on because of the sake of time. This is chapter 5. Now, chapter 5 is the answer to the reason why Isaiah had to go tell Hezekiah that he had to die. Remember, we talked about in chapter 20 of the Second Kings, where Isaiah had told him, and he gave him the reason why. The story is in Second Kings and other parts of the Old Testament as well, like the book of Isaiah, where Hezekiah had allowed Nebuchadnezzar to come into his house and see the things, the vessels of the gold and the silver of God's that was out of God's house, because the king, they raided the temple of God and took the things out of God's house. Nebuchadnezzar only begotten those things. You see the story again. I don't want to go in details about it, but as a result of them taking it and put it in Nebuchadnezzar's house, now Nebuchadnezzar's son is taken over in chapter 5. His son is now taken over, and his son uses all of the vessels, the cookers, and the plates, the cups, and the saucers, and all these things that was in Nebuchadnezzar's house that was God's, but his son is now using them to give a party, and that was the wrong thing to do, because God now don't let this king live very long after he used what he was not supposed to do of God. So see that story right here in chapter 5. But he too had, just like his father, a dream that only Daniel could interpret. And you will see that in this also. So all we're talking about are the dreams that Nebuchadnezzar had that was interpreted by Daniel for a reason. And as a result of Daniel interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he was given power in the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar. And same here in just like his brothers up in chapter 3, they too was given power in the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, because that's one of the things that Daniel asked Nebuchadnezzar to do after he had interpreted the dream, and Nebuchadnezzar gave him power. So he's asking Nebuchadnezzar to give his brothers the same kind of power that he had. So now his son, Nebuchadnezzar's son, is now having his dreams interpreted by Daniel, and Daniel is going to also be given power by this king as well. All the kings is going to give those four brothers the power that they need, but God had already given them the power. Look down at verse 11. Said, there is a man in your kingdom. This is one of Belshazzar's men in his kingdom, telling him about Daniel, in whom the spirit, notice I said the seven spirits of God. Notice what this person is telling the king in verse 11. There is a man in your kingdom in whom the spirit of the holy gods, and that's what he's saying, and in the days of your father, talking about Nebuchadnezzar, light and understanding and wisdom of the gods was found in him. So even Nebuchadnezzar's son had the men in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom had knowledge of the power of the seven spirits that was possessed by Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that was given to them by God before they were born, because they were foretold of that back in the Bible, in the Old Testament, by Isaiah, that they would be born of their father Hezekiah. Moving on, we're still in chapter 5, but now this is where the party started. Look up in it, but for and continue with the with the story. For as much, and this is in verse 12, for as much as an excellent spirit of knowledge and wisdom, the interpreting of dreams and showing of these hard sentences and dissolving the doubt that were found in Daniel. So Daniel had all these, and when you put it in blue, he possessed the seven spirits of God. You and I also possess the seven spirits of God. We just have to know how to use the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, the might, the counsel, the fear of the Lord, and the Lord's glory. And how we get that is ask, he said, and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone who asks it will receive, and he or she who seeks it will find it. And him or her that knocketh shall be opened. But believe me, it has to be a righteous request in order for you to get what's being given, because the reward that we see here that Daniel is getting is a reward of the good things that his father did. Hezekiah was a good man, but he did one thing wrong, and as a result of the consequences that he paid, his sons and all of his people had to go into captivity in Babylon, even though they had done some other things. His people, after he had gone, and before he had gone, they did some things that they weren't supposed to do. So God is now angry to put them into captivity and have them to be put in captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. But when you go back and you read verse 1, chapter 1, all the way through chapter 5, you'll see that God also punished Nebuchadnezzar severely, took him off his kingdom and put him out in the field. All that you've already seen when you get to this point. But he punished Nebuchadnezzar nevertheless, even though he gave Nebuchadnezzar permission to put his people in captivity because of what they had done. Wrong produces a consequences, and so does righteousness produce a consequences. And I pray, God, that I can live the righteous the way that God want me to live. Not I'm saying that I am a sinner just like everyone else, and I have to seek for forgiveness of my sins. But now what I'm suggesting to you, to what you hear, is that my goodness produces a consequences, and my sins also produces a consequences. Your goodness produces a consequences, and your sin also, or sins produces a consequences. So moving on. This again in chapter 6 now. We're in chapter 6. Remember what I showed you earlier. With Darius. See, Darius is in 2 or 3 different places in Daniel's life. But the other 2 kings, Nebuchadnezzar, his son, now is out of Daniel's life and his brothers. But at the top of this, in verse 25, where it said, and this writing that is written up on the wall, this is a writing that was written on the wall that no one could interpret. But Daniel, after Belshazzar, had to use all of the utensils or vessels out of God's house, that was of God, out of his father's house, and give a party for his wives and his concubines and all of his captains and people like that. So they were being punished, and the writing that you see on the wall, that was written on the wall, could only be interpreted by Daniel. Now, chapter 6, again, is where Darius takes over. This because the other 2 kings, the father, Nebuchadnezzar, are now out of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's life. But now they having undergo another king, King Darius. And you see on the screen how the King Darius set over the kingdom 120 princes. And now all of these people in that was also part of the management, as it were, of the providence of Babylon under this King Darius, who was a Mede and from Persia. So, but yet he still was king over these captives that Daniel had going to pray for to free, as we've already seen in chapter 9. We haven't gotten to chapter 9 yet, but he's there praying for. Now, in the Bible says breath of a living soul. We're talking about a living soul a while ago. Make sure you understand that. Go there, visit that, and understand that lesson as well. That's a lesson for the today's class, the Sunday school lesson for today's class. But we're talking about the captives of Judah. Then answered they and said, this is verse 13. Then answered they and said, behold, King Darius, which is the is the children of captive of Judah regarding not you. In other words, he had now these people putting things in his head, not dreams, but putting things in his head against Daniel because the nature of Daniel. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. Daniel would not bow down to the kings, would not eat the king's food, just would not do the things of the non-sinners, non Judites that would and Israelites that was being done. They just would not do it because they only would serve God Almighty. That's the only God we need is God Almighty. And this is why we're saying in the book of Daniel, showing you how God uses even captivity, if you're in captive, as we have been, uses that to show us how he wants us to be with him, and that all good and bad have a consequences. All goods have a consequences. All bads have consequences, and you will see that in the book of Daniel, how the good got consequences and how the bad also suffered. And the kings, even though they were kings, they suffered because of the interpretations of the dreams that they had. And here now, Darius also has issues, and Daniel has to use his knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in order to let Darius see what's being for him. Chapter 7, in the first year of the Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream of a vision. Now, this is Daniel's is having visions now. And Daniel's visions is about the kingdom and what's going to befall the kingdom and how his people are going to be free from the kingdom. So we can see all that. We're in chapter 7. But look at the top of the bottom part of chapter 6 that King Darius wrote unto the people and the nations and language. And this is why King Darius now is set up a decree. I make a decree that under the dominion of the kingdom, that now this is about the praying. Now the king has his way of running his country, but this is the one that throws that throws Daniel into the lion's den. Now, remember, his brothers had already been punished, right? Bones, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were thrown into the fiery furnace, came out, and God blessed them in the fire, and came out of the fire, and he made them number 2 in the kingdoms. So now Daniel did requested that they may be put over the providence of the second in charge of the kingdom. They are still in those positions, but now Daniel is going to defile the king and be thrown into the lion's den. And this is because Daniel is only being punished because Daniel's praying was being answered by God. And the king felt that Daniel, like most kings do, want you to bow down to them, but Daniel would not bow down to them because he kept on praying to God, and for that reason he's thrown into the lion's den. Make sure you stop this and slide. This is chapter 7, and we're talking about the visions that Daniel had and the ones who came to Daniel to explain the dreams that Daniel would have. I'm not hope not going this over in an hour. I just want to keep on going. At the bottom, God sent His glory. His glory. Make sure you understand that so you can understand what we're talking about in all of this lesson that we're given in the 12 chapters of the book of Daniel. That's all it is, but it encompasses a whole lot of information that we need to know because there's nothing that's new under the sun. So now in chapter 8, it starts out saying, in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar. And notice it goes back. You see how it goes? We're back to another king. We just left Darius, and then we left Nebuchadnezzar and his son, and then we're back to Nebuchadnezzar's son again. So that's how the book of Daniel is laid out, similar to the book of Ezekiel, but the story is being told in both books. Is being told about the captivity of the children of Israel. If you can understand what I'm saying, in the book of Ezekiel, it's talking about actually 70 years, but the story is about 30 years because the 70 years, 40 of the 70 years is all about God. We have to see that how the glory of God is explained unto the Son of Man, how that's laid out. That's in the book of Ezekiel. But now here in the book of Daniel, we're looking at Daniel for 70 years that they were in captivity, for the entire 70 years, and how these four brothers who went into captivity only because of something that their father done. And as a result of them going into captivity, they went in there under God's plan to bring the children out, the children of Israel, God's people, I'll say it that way, to bring God's people out of captivity. They went in with the captives, who they also were captives, living like kings, but their mission that God had for them that they even didn't know themselves, God's plan was for them to bring their people out, as we have already seen in the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah. We've already seen it. We just may not have known what we're looking at because of where the story and where the Bible is laid out. But now, moving on in chapter 8 of the book of Daniel, we're still talking about the visions that Daniel had, and he's saying, I saw in a vision, I was by the river Ulio, and I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram having two horns, and all this is in Daniel's dream. But Daniel has the ability to interpret not just the king's dream, but he also had the ability to interpret his dreams. And there's still some things he said that he didn't understand as a result of this. Now notice, I underlined this because Daniel said, and it came to pass when I, Daniel, had seen in a vision and sought the meaning. Daniel didn't understand his vision now. Now notice, now Daniel had visions. Nebuchadnezzar, his son Darius, had dreams. Daniel had visions, and Daniel didn't understand his vision. He said, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of the river, which was called Gabriel. So now this is Gabriel, make this man to understand. So now Gabriel is the one that had to interpret Daniel's dream, the angel Gabriel. And you'll see the angel Gabriel throughout the Bible. You know, he talked to Elizabeth to tell Elizabeth John the Baptist was going to be born. Gabriel talked to Mary to tell her that Jesus Christ will be born. And now we're here in the book of Daniel, and throughout the book of Daniel, 2 or 3 times, you see where the angel Gabriel has come to Daniel to give Daniel information that Daniel didn't know and didn't understand. But the angel is explaining to Daniel what it is, just like he is here in this 17th verse. Well, starting actually up in the 13th verse, all the way down to the end of the chapter, where the angel Gabriel is explaining to Daniel about the visions that Daniel had. Okay, I'm almost an hour, so we're gonna move on. Chapter 9. Now, this is a prayer that I showed. I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on this. We've seen this prayer back up in the introduction to this, where we're showing you the 9th chapter of the book of Daniel. Is where Darius the king is um, punishing Daniel for praying, and Daniel is praying now. This is how the prayer to release the children of Israel and the tribe of Judah out of captivity. Notice that there's a significant I want to show. In the first year of King Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, that's the king that that married Esther. That king killed his wife and married Esther. Okay, so I'm saying Esther was Darius's stepmother, if you can understand what I'm saying, because this is a king that married Esther after Vesti, Queen Vesti. She was killed by the king, and then he married Esther. That's a long story, for another day in another class. But then, nevertheless, the significance of that was to show you now we're in the 9th chapter. In the 9th chapter, it really is about from the 4th verse down through the 27th verse is about the prayer that Daniel is praying so that his people would be freed out of captivity, and they would then go back into their own land. And you'll see those stories in the book of Ezra, Ezra, and the book of Nehemiah. You'll see those stories where they went in. In the book of Ezra, they're rebuilding the temple, 42,360 construction workers. And in the book of Nehemiah, they built the wall, 42,320 construction workers. That's the story. You'll see that. Now let's move on We're now going on through this is a prayer. We've already seen this information once in the book of Daniel chapter 9. We're not going to spend a lot of time. We're going to go to now 10, chapter 10. And now this is the third year. Now we changed kings now. This is just on the chapter. Cyrus is now the Persian. We'll see in the third year, Cyrus of Persia, he now is revealed to Daniel who's under the same name. Yet another dream and understanding of the vision. So Daniel is now into under the King Cyrus, and we're talking about that there. And I was on the side of a great river, Hadakades. Well, the river Hadakades is the Tiger River, what we know as the Tigris River. The name was changed, but from Tigris to what it is today, but it is the Tigris River. And down into 11, and he said unto me, O Daniel, man great beloved, understand the words of speak unto you, and stand upright, for unto you I am not sent. This is the Michael now is talking to Daniel. I'm going to move on down to this because I didn't want to take over an hour. Stop this and see chapter 10 because I really want to go to the next two chapters, Spirit of God at the bottom. Make sure you notice that in chapter 11 and 12. Now we're back into Darius again. Remember, Darius was in 9 and Cyrus was in chapter 10. And now we're in chapter 11, and Darius is back again in chapter 11 through 12. But we're going to sum this up now to show you, with a few minutes left, about 4 minutes left, this story in Daniel. Now let's go through this 11. But the significance of 11 and 12 are really, really related, and I hope for you to stop these slides and study, if not this, study it in your own Bible, in your own way, but make sure you get an understanding of chapter 11. Excuse me, and chapter 12 of the book of Daniel. And both these kings' heart shall be to do mischievous. Both kings did mischievous. This is Daniel explaining in his visions what this is about. And yes, also the Prince of Covenant. All this information is, I should just take more time than what we're on. Chapter 12 is what we've already seen. I'm going to go through chapter 12 and show you the significance of chapter 12 and here. And look at verse 2 of chapter 12. And many of them shall sleep in the dust. Talking about the people. This is people now we're talking about. In the dust and wait. And some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contentment. I'm saying that for the good, there's a consequences, and for the bad, there's a consequences. The ones that's going to wait until everlasting is a consequence, and the ones to the everlasting, to the everlasting life is going to be a consequence, and those who will be to the everlasting shame or contentment, that's also a consequence. And they that is wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. Now, the firmament is the heavens. So, in the soul that we're talking about in this lesson here now is that the soul would be as a brightness in the firmament, if you can follow what I'm saying. And in Revelation chapter 19, John said, and I saw much people in heaven, and they was all saying one thing, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So your soul is going to be in one or two places. And here we're talking about is right here in chapter 12, verse 2. And they that be wise shall shine in the brightness of a firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars of everlasting. Understand the word stars there, because we're really not talking about the stars that glitter in the sky. We're talking about your soul being the star, and your soul, back up when we just talked about, was the watching the Holy One. That's also a star. Now, in conclusion of this, I want to take just a few more minutes to sum this up. I'm going to go from this and make sure you stop this information for yourself, okay? Now, this is the seed of Abraham, and the seven spirits of God were sent forth into all the earth, into the seed of Abraham. And Abraham had 8 sons. You see them on the screen by name: Ishmael, Isaac, and the 6 sons you see on the left, whose mother was Keturah, who was Abraham's wife after Sarah died. And Abraham lived up to 180 plus years, and Sarah died at 120. So let me conclude this. My name is David Richardson. I've been with you now. Make sure you go to Breath of the Living Soul. And this is me, David Richardson. I want to thank you for taking me the time. 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Or God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is one God. Thank you and have a blessed day. Love you. Bye-bye.